Welcome to LinesToGo installation videos. Today we will be replacing brake lines on a Dodge Ram 1500 using LinesToGo part number BLD-170-SS. While this particular installation is being performed on a Dodge Ram 1500, the set of lines will also fit the following make and models as shown on your screen now. LinesToGo lines are made using original equipment end forms and fittings that are CNC bent for an easy and precise installation. We have also upgraded to stainless steel braided Teflon hoses for rust protection and to prevent surface fouling. These have an unlimited shelf life and anti-static PTFE liner. This set of LinesToGo lines are made using 304L stainless steel for rust resistance that exceeds OEM standards. Tech tip: disconnect the battery before working on a vehicle to reduce the risk of shorting out the battery on tools or lines. LinesToGo lines are made with a sectional design for easier installation. We also use color-coded unions on our sectioned lines. Just match the colors at the connections. Make sure to depressurize the fuel system before starting the installation. Tools required: 8mm, 11mm, 13mm, 22mm, and 24mm sockets and ratchet, 10mm, 12mm, 13mm, 14mm, and 16mm wrenches, flat blade screwdriver, cutting pliers, drain pan, jack and jack stands. The level of difficulty for this installation is considered to be medium. Start by disconnecting the negative battery terminal using a 13mm wrench. Raise and support the vehicle and use a 22mm socket to remove all four wheels. Inside of the left front wheel well, use an 8mm socket to remove the screws that secure the plastic inner fender and remove it from the vehicle. Use a 12mm wrench to remove the two threaded fittings from the master cylinder. Use a 12mm wrench to remove the two threaded fittings from the top of the ABS module. Remove the secondary brake line that runs from the master cylinder to the ABS module from the vehicle. Inside of the left front wheel well, use a 12mm wrench to remove the two top threaded fittings. If the fittings are seized to the lines, you can cut the line behind the fitting and then use a socket or wrench to remove the fitting. Remove the primary brake line along with the first section of the rear brake line from the vehicle. Next, use a 12mm wrench to remove the remaining vertical fitting inside of the left front wheel well. Use a 13mm socket to remove the bolt that secures the right front brake line and remove the plastic bracket from the line. Using a pair of cutting pliers, cut the right front brake line inside of the left front wheel well at the front of the shock mount. Remove the driver's side section of the right front brake line from the vehicle. At the right front wheel well, use a 12mm wrench to remove the threaded fitting from the top of the right front flex hose. Cut the right front brake line in front of the right front shock mount. Remove the passenger side section of the right front brake line from the vehicle. At the front of the vehicle, use a 24mm socket to remove the two large bolts that secure the steering rack into position. This will allow you to push the steering rack towards the rear, giving you more room to route the lines. Remove the middle section of the right front brake line from the plastic clips and remove it from the vehicle. Next, we will need to remove the fuel tank. Inside of the left rear wheel well, use a flat blade screwdriver to loosen the clamp at the fuel filler neck and remove the hose. Disconnect the vapor line by depressing the plastic tab. You can also use a disconnect tool, LinesToGo part number 5230-01 or 3133-01. Place a support underneath the fuel tank and use a 15mm socket to remove the nuts that secure the tank straps and remove the straps from the vehicle. Start to lower the fuel tank, making sure to route the fuel filler hose and vapor line over the top of the frame. Once the tank is lowered enough that you can access the top, remove the electrical connector from the sending unit. Remove the supply line quick connect fitting from the sending unit by depressing the plastic tab. Remove the large vapor line connection by depressing the plastic tab. Continue to lower the tank and remove it from underneath the vehicle. Inside of the left front wheel well, use a 12mm wrench to remove the remaining threaded fitting. Use a pair of cutting pliers to cut the rear brake line behind the charcoal canister. Remove the forward section of the rear brake line from the vehicle. At the rear of the vehicle, use a 12mm wrench to remove the threaded fitting from the top of the rear flex hose. Remove the line from the plastic clips along the frame and remove the rear section of the rear brake line from the vehicle. At the rear axle, use a 12mm wrench to remove the threaded fittings from the bottom of the rear flex hose. Use a 13mm socket to remove the bolt that secures the left rear flex hose. Use an 11mm socket to remove the banjo bolt that secures the left rear flex hose to the caliper. Remove the left rear axle line and flex hose from the vehicle. Use a flat blade screwdriver or pry bar to open the metal tab that secures the right rear axle line to the axle. Use a 13mm socket to remove the bolt that secures the right rear flex hose. Use an 11mm socket to remove the banjo bolt that secures the right rear flex hose to the caliper and remove the right rear axle line and flex hose from the vehicle. To begin the installation of your new LinesToGo stainless steel brake lines, start by installing the right rear flex hose labeled 7985-01. Install one of the supplied copper washers onto the banjo bolt, followed by the flex hose and then another copper washer. Tighten the bolt using an 11mm socket. Secure the other end of the flex hose using a 13mm socket. Next, install the left rear flex hose labeled 7974-01 following the previous steps. Tighten the banjo bolt using an 11mm socket. Secure the other end of the flex hose using a 13mm socket. Next, install the right rear LinesToGo axle line labeled 06B into position. Start one fitting into the right rear flex hose and the other fitting into the bottom of the rear flex hose. Secure the line to the axle using the metal tab. Tighten the fitting in the right rear flex hose using a 14mm and a 16mm wrench. Tighten the fitting in the bottom of the rear flex hose using a 12mm wrench. Next, install the left rear axle line labeled 06A into position. Start one fitting into the bottom of the rear flex hose and the other fitting into the left rear flex hose. Tighten the fitting in the left rear flex hose using a 14mm and a 16mm wrench. Tighten the fitting in the bottom of the rear flex hose using a 12mm wrench. Next, install the rearmost section of the rear LinesToGo brake line labeled 05C into position. Start the rear fitting into the top of the rear flex hose. Secure the line into the plastic clips along the frame. Install the next section of the rear LinesToGo brake line labeled 05B into position. Start the front threaded fitting into the horizontal port in the frame-mounted union. Connect the two sections of line using the supplied union noting the LinesToGo color-coded connection. Secure the line into the plastic clips along the frame. Tighten the fittings in the top of the rear flex hose and the frame-mounted union using a 10mm wrench. Tighten the LinesToGo union using a 10mm and a 13mm wrench. Next, install the passenger section of the right front brake line labeled 04C into position. Start one fitting into the top of the right front flex hose. Next, install the middle section of the right front brake line labeled 04B into position and secure it into the plastic clips. Connect the two sections of line using the supplied union, noting the LinesToGo color-coded connection. Install the final section of the right front brake line labeled 04A into position. Start one fitting into the bottom of the frame-mounted union. Connect the sections of line using the supplied union, noting the LinesToGo color-coded connection. Replace the plastic clip near the frame-mounted union and secure it using a 13mm socket. Tighten the fittings in the frame-mounted union and the right front flex hose using a 10mm wrench. Tighten the two LinesToGo unions using a 10mm and a 13mm wrench. Next, install the final section of the rear brake line labeled 05A into position. Start the bottom fitting into the rear port in the frame-mounted union. Start the top fitting into the forward port in the ABS module by hand. Tighten the fitting in the ABS module using a 12mm wrench. Tighten the fitting in the frame-mounted union using a 10mm wrench. Next, install the primary LinesToGo brake line labeled 01 into position. Start the bottom fitting into the front port in the frame-mounted union. Start the top fitting into the rear port in the master cylinder by hand. Tighten the fitting in the master cylinder using a 12mm wrench. Tighten the fitting in the frame-mounted union using a 14mm wrench. Next, install the secondary brake line labeled 02 into position. Start one fitting into the front port in the master cylinder by hand. Start the other fitting into the rear port in the ABS module by hand. Tighten both threaded fittings using a 14mm wrench. Bleed all four wheels using a 10mm wrench, making sure to keep the master cylinder reservoir topped up with fluid. Replace the driver's side front inner fender and secure it using an 8mm socket. Replace the two bolts that secure the steering rack and secure them using a 24mm socket. Replace the fuel tank underneath the vehicle and begin to raise it into position. Once the tank is high enough, connect the large vapor tube at the front of the tank. Connect the supply line at the sending unit and replace the electrical connector. Continue to raise the fuel tank into position while routing the fuel filler neck and small vapor tube over the top of the frame. Replace the fuel tank straps and secure them using a 15mm socket. Connect the small vapor line at the fuel filler neck along with a large filler tube. Tighten the clamp on the large tube using a flat blade screwdriver. Replace all four wheels and torque to your manufacturer's recommended torque specification using a 22mm socket. Replace the negative battery terminal and secure it using a 13mm wrench. This concludes the installation of stainless steel brake lines on a Dodge Ram 1500 using LinesToGo part number BLD-170-SS. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions or would like to purchase the lines you saw today, please call us at 1-855-781-5992. Email us at info@linestogo.com or check out our website link below. Don't forget to take advantage of our free next day shipping. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button below, and we will see you in our next video.